In the mountains of Afghanistan, where rocks hold secrets and shadows hide enemies, 12 Navy SEALs thought they were the hunters. They had trained for years, perfected their skills, and believed they were invisible. But on this scorching afternoon in 2005, they discovered that sometimes the hunted become the hunters, and sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. What happened next would change military history forever. A single shot from an unknown position would turn certain death into miraculous survival. The question wasn't just who fired that shot. It was how one person could see what an entire elite team couldn't, and why they chose to intervene when the world's most dangerous men had already written the SEAL's obituary. This is not just another war story. This is the true account of 12 minutes that redefined courage, brotherhood, and the thin line between life and death in the world's most unforgiving battlefield. The morning sun painted the Afghan mountains in shades of gold and crimson as Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez checked his watch. 6:45 a.m. The SEAL team had been moving through the rocky terrain for 3 hours, their boots finding purchase on loose stones and weathered granite. The mission briefing had been clear: locate and extract a high-value Taliban commander who had been coordinating attacks against coalition forces in the region. Rodriguez adjusted his tactical vest and glanced at his team. 11 of the Navy's finest operators moved like ghosts through the landscape. Each man carried years of training, countless missions, and an unshakable belief in their abilities. They were the tip of the spear, the ones called when others couldn't get the job done. Petty Officer First Class Danny Chun crouched behind a boulder 20 meters ahead, his eyes scanning the valley below through high-power binoculars. The intelligence reports indicated their target had been using a compound built into the mountainside as his base of operations. From their current position, the team had a clear view of the structure, but something felt wrong. The silence was too complete. In Afghanistan, there is always some sign of life: birds, insects, the distant sound of generators or conversations. Today, the mountains held their breath like a sleeping predator. Chief Rodriguez spoke into his radio, his voice barely above a whisper. "Overwatch, this is Ground Team Alpha. We have visual on the objective. No movement detected. Request permission to advance to Phase Line Bravo." The response crackled through his earpiece after a moment. "Ground Team Alpha, this is Overwatch. You are cleared to advance. Be advised, drone surveillance shows possible movement 3 clicks to your northeast. Stay alert." Rodriguez acknowledged and signaled to his team. They began their descent toward the compound, using a route that would keep them concealed among the rocks and sparse vegetation. The plan was textbook: establish Overwatch positions, conduct surveillance, then move in for the capture operation. Seaman Jake Morrison, the youngest member of the team at 24, felt his heart rate increase as they moved closer to the target. This was his first major operation since completing SEAL training, and he was determined to prove himself worthy of the trident he wore on his chest. His role was communications and backup security, but he knew that in this business, roles could change in seconds. The compound came into clearer view as they advanced. Built into a natural cave system and reinforced with concrete and steel, it was an impressive defensive position. Multiple levels carved into the rock face provided excellent cover and overlapping fields of fire. Whoever had chosen this location understood warfare. Petty Officer Second Class Tony Williams, the team's explosives expert, studied the structure through his scope. "Chief, that place is built like a fortress. Multiple entry points, natural cover, and I'm betting there are tunnels we can't see from here." Rodriguez nodded grimly. The intelligence had understated the defensive capabilities of the position. This wasn't going to be a simple snatch and grab operation. They would need to be creative. Senior Chief David Kowalski, the most experienced member of the team with 18 years of special operations experience, motioned for the team to take cover behind a series of large boulders. His instincts, honed by dozens of combat deployments, were sending warning signals. The compound looked too quiet, too perfect. Something's not right. he whispered to Rodriguez. "This feels like a setup." Before Rodriguez could respond, Chin's urgent voice came through their communication system. "Chief, I've got movement. Multiple hostiles moving into position on the ridgeline to our north. Estimate 20 to 30 fighters." The pieces began falling into place in Rodriguez's mind. The perfect intelligence about the compound's location, the detailed information about the target's schedule, the convenient timing of their mission. They hadn't been hunting their target. They had been led into a trap. The realization hit the entire team simultaneously. They were positioned in what military tacticians called a kill zone, an area where an enemy could bring devastating firepower to bear from multiple directions while limiting the target's ability to escape or return effective fire. Petty Officer First Class Alex Thompson, the team medic, was already calculating distances to potential cover positions when the first shots rang out. The distinctive crack of AK-47 fire echoed off the canyon walls, followed immediately by the deeper boom of heavy machine guns. The Taliban fighters had positioned themselves expertly. Groups on the northern ridgeline provided plunging fire from above, while positions in the compound itself offered direct fire from the front. The SEALs were caught in a crossfire with limited cover and no clear escape route. Rodriguez's training kicked in immediately. "Contact front and north. Williams, get some E on that ridgeline. Thompson, treat and move. Everyone else, return fire and bound by teams to that rock formation at our 6. The canyon erupted in gunfire as both sides engaged. The SEALs' superior training and marksmanship began to tell as their precise, aimed shots found targets among the Taliban fighters. But the enemy had numbers and position on their side. Bullets sparked off rocks around Morrison's position as he worked frantically to establish communications with their support elements. "Overwatch, this is Ground Team Alpha. We are in contact with approximately 40 enemy fighters. Grid reference 37 Delta 492. Request immediate air support." The response was devastating news. "Ground Team Alpha, be advised no air assets available for immediate support. Closest CAS is 20 minutes out. Ground QRF is 45 minutes to your position." Chun adjusted his position to get a better angle on the compound when a burst of machine gun fire shattered the rock inches from his head, filling his eyes with granite dust. Temporarily blinded, he stumbled backward just as another burst cut through the air where he had been standing. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Taliban fighters were using classic ambush tactics, keeping the SEALs pinned down while maneuvering additional fighters to cut off their escape routes. Radio chatter indicated that more enemy reinforcements were moving to surround the American position. Williams managed to get a 40-millimeter grenade into one of the machine gun positions on the ridgeline, silencing the weapon and its crew. The explosion echoed through the canyon, raining rock and debris down on both sides. But for every position they neutralized, 2 more seemed to open fire. Senior Chief Kowalski had been in enough firefights to recognize when tactical situation was becoming untenable. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and in an exposed position with limited ammunition. Unless something changed quickly, they would be forced to attempt a fighting withdrawal through terrain that favored the enemy. "Chief," Thompson's voice carried urgency and pain. "Morrison's hit. Took one through the shoulder." Rodriguez looked back to see Morrison propped against a boulder, his left shoulder bleeding heavily, but still working his radio equipment with grim determination. The young SEAL's face was pale, but his hands remained steady as he continued trying to coordinate support. The enemy fire was becoming more accurate and coordinated. Whoever was commanding the Taliban fighters understood small unit tactics and was adjusting their positions to maintain pressure on the Americans while preventing them from establishing effective return fire positions. A new sound joined the battle, the distinctive whistle of incoming mortars. The Taliban had managed to bring indirect fire assets into play, further complicating the SEAL situation. The first rounds landed long, but Rodriguez knew they would adjust quickly. "We need to move now," he shouted over the gunfire. "Thompson, can Morrison travel?" The medic checked his patient quickly. He can move, but he's losing blood fast. I need to get him proper medical attention soon." The mortar fire was walking closer to their position. Each impact sent showers of rock and dirt raining down on the team. The Taliban spotters were adjusting their aim based on the SEALs' muzzle flashes and movement. Kowalski identified what looked like a possible escape route, a narrow ravine that led down the mountain away from the main engagement area. It would mean abandoning the mission and fighting their way out through unknown terrain, but it was better than staying in their current position. "Chief, if we can make it to that ravine, we might be able to break contact and move to a defensible position," he suggested, pointing toward the depression in the landscape. Rodriguez assessed the route. It was exposed for the first 50 meters, but if they could reach the ravine, the terrain would provide cover from the enemy positions. The problem was getting there alive. The mortar fire was becoming dangerously accurate. A round landed just 20 meters from Chen's position, close enough that the concussion knocked him flat and left his ears ringing. Rock fragments peppered the area, and the acrid smell of explosives filled the air. Williams lobbed another grenade at the compound, trying to suppress the enemy fire long enough for the team to move. The explosion lit up one of the firing positions, but the respite was brief. Within seconds, the enemy fire resumed with renewed intensity. Morrison, despite his wound, managed to establish communication with a nearby Apache helicopter that was returning from another mission. "Apache 77, this is Ground Team Alpha. We're troops in contact and need immediate assistance. Grid reference 37 Delta 492. The pilot's response offered hope, but no immediate relief. "Ground Team Alpha, this is Apache 77. We could be on station in 12 minutes. Hold position and mark your location with IR strobes." 12 minutes might as well have been 12 hours. The way the battle was developing, they would be lucky to survive 12 more minutes in their current position. The Taliban fighters were becoming bolder, advancing under cover of their heavy weapons fire. Rodriguez could see muzzle flashes getting closer as enemy fighters bounded forward, using the same tactics the SEALs employed. Thompson worked frantically to stop Morrison's bleeding while keeping one eye on their tactical situation. The young SEAL was getting weaker, and they needed to move soon if they were going to save his life. Another mortar round landed closer, this one only 15 meters away. The blast wave knocked several team members down and filled the air with choking dust. When the debris settled, Rodriguez realized they were out of time and options. The Taliban had them exactly where they wanted them. Chief Rodriguez made the decision that would either save his team or doom them all. "We moved to the ravine in 30 seconds. Williams, Thompson, you carry Morrison. Everyone else provides covering fire." The next few moments would determine whether any of them lived to see the sun set. Rodriguez checked his magazine. He was down to his last 30 rounds. Around him, his team was in similar condition. They had been engaged for 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Chen wiped blood from his eyes where rock fragments had cut his forehead. The Taliban fighters were close enough now that he could hear their voices shouting commands in Pashto. They were coordinating a final assault that would overrun the American position. Senior Chief Kowalski identified the greatest immediate threat, a squad of Taliban fighters moving along the northern ridge who had flanked around to a position where they could fire directly into the SEAL team's planned escape route. If those fighters weren't neutralized, the team would be cut down in the open ground between their current position and the ravine. "Chief, we've got a problem." Kowalski pointed toward the flanking element. "Those guys are going to light us up the second we break cover." Rodriguez followed his senior enlisted advisor's gaze and felt his stomach drop. The Taliban squad was perfectly positioned to create a killing field across their only escape route. They were trapped between the anvil of the compound's defensive positions and the hammer of the flanking force. Williams prepared his last two 40mm grenades, hoping to create enough suppression to allow the team to move. But even with perfect shots, there were too many enemy positions to neutralize with the ammunition they had remaining. Thompson had Morrison ready to move, the wounded SEAL's arm draped across the medic's shoulder. Morrison's face was gray from blood loss, but his eyes remained alert and determined. "Doc, just get me to where I can still shoot. I'm not leaving my team." The mortar fire had found their range. The next round would likely be a direct hit on their position. Rodriguez could hear the distinctive whistle of the incoming shell and knew they had seconds to act. "Move now," he screamed. The team broke from cover in a coordinated bound, each man knowing that this desperate dash might be his last act on Earth. Williams fired both grenades at the flanking position while the rest of the team laid down suppressing fire in every direction. The mortar round impacted exactly where they had been sheltering moments before, obliterating their former position with a thunderous explosion that hurled massive chunks of granite through the air like deadly shrapnel. Chin was the first to reach the ravine, diving headfirst over the lip and rolling down the steep slope until a fallen log stopped his tumble. He immediately turned back to provide covering fire for his teammates who were still crossing the deadly open ground. Thompson and Morrison were halfway to the ravine when the flanking squad opened fire. Bullets cracked past their heads as Thompson struggled to maintain his footing while supporting his wounded teammate. Morrison tried to return fire with his sidearm, his injured arm making accurate shots nearly impossible. Kowalski was providing rear security when he saw something that made his blood run cold. Additional Taliban fighters were emerging from concealed positions in the compound, positions that intelligence had completely missed. The enemy force was much larger than anyone had anticipated, and they were about to unleash overwhelming firepower on the exposed Americans. Contact rear. Multiple hostiles emerging from the compound. Kowalski's warning came just as the hidden fighters opened fire with everything they had. The canyon erupted in a crescendo of gunfire that echoed off the rock walls like thunder. Muzzle flashes lit up positions all around the SEAL team's former location as Taliban fighters revealed themselves from dozens of concealed spots. Rodriguez realized with crystal clarity that his team was about to be annihilated. They were caught in the open, outnumbered 10-1, with wounded personnel and dwindling ammunition. The tactical situation had gone from bad to hopeless in the span of heartbeats. Williams reached the ravine and immediately set up his machine gun to provide covering fire for the rest of the team. His belt-fed weapon chattered steadily as he engaged targets across the canyon, trying to suppress the overwhelming enemy fire. Thompson and Morrison tumbled into the ravine just as a burst of automatic fire chewed up the ground where they had been standing. Morrison's wound was bleeding heavily again from the exertion of their desperate run, and Thompson knew he needed immediate medical attention that they couldn't provide in their current situation. Kowalski was the last man crossing the open ground when disaster struck. A Taliban fighter with an RPG emerged from the compound and took aim at the ravine where the Americans had taken shelter. The rocket-propelled grenade would turn their narrow sanctuary into a death trap. Rodriguez saw the RPG gunner at the same moment Kowalski did. Both men knew there was no time to warn the team or take evasive action. The grenade was already flying toward them, its deadly warhead programmed to explode on impact with the rocky walls of the ravine. Time seemed to slow as Rodriguez watched the projectile streak through the air. He could see the smoke trail, hear the distinctive whistle of the rocket motor, and calculate the trajectory that would send shrapnel tearing through his entire team. In that frozen moment, he thought about the wives and children who would receive folded flags and condolences instead of their husbands and fathers. He thought about the missions they would never complete, the lives they would never save, the freedom they would never defend. The RPG was 50 meters away and closing fast when a single rifle shot rang out from somewhere high above the battlefield. The shot came from a direction none of the combatants had been watching, a rocky outcropping nearly 800 meters away and 300 meters higher than the canyon floor. The bullet struck the RPG gunner in the center of his chest, spinning him around and sending his weapon tumbling into the rocks below. The Taliban fighter collapsed, his finger reflexively pulling the trigger of his launcher as he fell. The RPG fired harmlessly into the sky, exploding in a brilliant flash against the canyon wall high above the Americans' position. For a moment, the entire battlefield fell silent as both sides tried to understand what had just happened. The shot had come from an impossible distance, from a position no one had identified, at exactly the right moment to prevent catastrophe. Rodriguez and his team looked up toward the high ground, searching for any sign of their savior. Through their binoculars, they could just make out a figure moving among the rocks, a lone shooter in traditional Afghan clothing who seemed to materialize from the mountain itself. The mysterious sniper fired again, this time targeting one of the Taliban machine gun positions on the northern ridge. The heavy weapon fell silent as its gunner pitched forward, eliminated by another precision shot across nearly 1,000 meters of open air. Chun was the first to understand what was happening. "Chief, somebody up there is taking out their key positions. That's world-class shooting." The hidden sniper continued his deadly work with methodical precision. Each shot eliminated a specific threat: machine gun crews, squad leaders, RPG gunners. The Taliban fighters began to panic as their comrades fell to an enemy they couldn't see or locate. Williams watched in amazement as the mysterious marksman systematically dismantled the ambush that had moments before seemed certain to annihilate the SEAL team. Whoever that is, he's single-handedly changing the entire tactical situation. The Taliban commanders began shouting orders, trying to regain control of the engagement. But their fighters were now divided between maintaining their assault on the Americans and searching for the ghost who was picking them off from the high ground. Thompson used the distraction to work on Morrison's wound, applying pressure bandages and administering pain medication. "Jake, you're going to be fine. Just hold on a little longer." Morrison managed a weak smile. "Doc, I'm not going anywhere. My team needs me." Kowalski was studying the high ground through his scope, trying to identify their mysterious benefactor. "Chief, I think I can see him moving between positions up there. He's covering a lot of ground and making shots I wouldn't attempt with my best rifle." The sniper fired again, and another Taliban fighter dropped. This time, Rodriguez caught a glimpse of muzzle flash from a completely different position than the previous shots. Whoever was up there was moving constantly, preventing the enemy from fixing his location. The psychological effect on the Taliban fighters was immediate and devastating. Men who had been advancing confidently just minutes before were now seeking cover and looking over their shoulders. The initiative in the battle was shifting away from the ambushers. Rodriguez realized they had been given a miraculous opportunity. "This is our chance. We need to move deeper into the ravine and find a defensive position where we can hold until air support arrives." The team began moving along the narrow confines of the ravine, using the rocky walls as cover while their unknown guardian continued his precision fire from above. Each shot seemed to target the exact enemy position that posed the greatest threat to the Americans' movement. Chin paused to look back at their previous position, now being pounded by inaccurate Taliban fire, as the enemy fighters shot at shadows and ghosts. "Chief, how is one guy doing all this? He's shooting from positions that are physically impossible to reach that quickly." The mystery deepened as the sniper's fire continued with supernatural accuracy. Shots that should have been impossible in terms of range, angle, and timing were finding their targets with deadly precision. It was as if the mountains themselves had decided to protect the American warriors. Williams found a defensive position where the ravine widened slightly, offering good fields of fire back toward their pursuers. "Chief, we can hold here until the Apache arrives. But I want to meet whoever's up there saving our lives." As if responding to his comment, the hidden sniper's rifle spoke again. This time the target was a Taliban fighter who had been moving to flank the Americans' new position. The enemy soldier collapsed just as he was bringing his weapon to bear on Thompson and Morrison. Rodriguez keyed his radio. "Apache 7-7, this is Ground Team Alpha. We have moved to alternate position and have unknown friendly providing sniper support from the high ground. Estimate 10 minutes until we can mark our location." The Apache pilot's response carried obvious confusion. "Ground Team Alpha, we show no friendly sniper teams in your area. Are you certain this is friendly fire?" Rodriguez looked up toward the rocks where their mysterious protector continued his deadly work. Apache 7-7, I'm absolutely certain. This shooter has saved our lives at least 6 times in the past 5 minutes. The question of who was up there would have to wait. The Taliban fighters were regrouping, and the battle was far from over. The Taliban fighters were adapting to their mysterious enemy with a pragmatic intelligence that had kept them fighting for decades. Unable to locate the sniper who was decimating their ranks, they began using smoke grenades and coordinated movement to mask their positions and advance on the Americans. Chief Rodriguez watched through his binoculars as white smoke began billowing from multiple points around the canyon. The enemy was creating concealment that would allow them to move closer while limiting the effectiveness of the high-ground sniper. They're smart, Senior Chief Kowalski observed grimly. Whoever's commanding these guys knows what he's doing. He's neutralizing our guardian angel and setting up for a final assault. The smoke was working. The mysterious sniper's rate of fire decreased noticeably as his targets became harder to identify through the artificial fog. The Taliban fighters began advancing under cover of the screening smoke, their voices carrying across the canyon as they coordinated their movements. Petty Officer Thompson finished treating Morrison's wound as best he could under the circumstances. The young SEAL had lost significant blood, but the bleeding was controlled and he remained conscious and alert. Jake, you need to stay put and let us handle this. Morrison shook his head weakly, but with determination. Doc, with respect, I didn't survive BUD/S to hide in a hole while my team fights. Give me a rifle and point me toward the enemy. Should have found a position where he could observe the Taliban advance through gaps in the smoke. What he saw made his blood run cold. Chief, they're moving at least 50 fighters toward our position. They're organized into fire teams with suppression and maneuver elements. The tactical situation was becoming desperate again. Even with the mysterious sniper's intervention, the Americans were still drastically outnumbered and in a defensive position that could be easily overrun by determined attackers. Williams set up his machine gun to cover the most likely approach routes, but he was down to his last belt of ammunition. Chief, I can give you maybe 2 minutes of sustained fire, then I'm down on my sidearm. Rodriguez did the mental math that every combat leader dreads. 12 men, half with limited ammunition, 1 wounded, against 50 or more enemy fighters who knew the terrain and had the initiative. The numbers simply didn't work in their favor. The Apache helicopter was still 8 minutes away, but Rodriguez was beginning to doubt they would survive that long. The Taliban advance was methodical and professional, exactly the kind of coordinated assault that could overwhelm even elite defenders. Then the mountain spoke again. The sniper had relocated to a new position that gave him clear lines of sight through the smoke. His first shot took down what appeared to be a Taliban commander who was directing the assault from a central position. The second shot eliminated a machine gunner who was setting up to provide covering fire for the advancing fighters. But this time, something was different about the shots. They were coming from a position even higher and more distant than before, from a rocky outcropping that seemed impossible to reach without mountaineering equipment and hours of climbing. Kowalski studied the new firing position through his scope. Chief, there's no way anyone could have gotten to that position from where he was shooting before. The terrain is too steep and exposed. Chun was thinking the same thing. Unless there's more than one of them up there. The possibility sent a chill through Rodriguez's mind. Were they being protected by a single impossible marksman, or was there an entire team of snipers positioned throughout the mountains? And if so, who were they and why were they helping American forces? The Taliban fighters were also trying to understand what they were facing. Their advance had stalled as squad leaders tried to identify and neutralize the threat from the high ground. Confusion was spreading through their ranks as men who had been confident of victory just minutes before began to question their situation. Morrison managed to prop himself up against the ravine wall and bring his rifle to bear on the approaches to their position. Despite his wound and blood loss, his hands remained steady and his eyes sharp. Chief, I've got overwatch on the eastern approach. Thompson wanted to protest, but he recognized the look in the young SEAL's eyes. This was a warrior who would fight until his last breath, wound or no wound. Just don't do anything stupid, Jake. Your wife wants you to come home. The mysterious sniper fired again, this time targeting a Taliban fighter who was attempting to place an explosive device near the ravine entrance. The bomb would have collapsed part of the rocky wall and trapped the Americans in their defensive position. The terrorist fell with the device still in his hands, the explosion contained by his body. Williams witnessed the shot and shook his head in amazement. That guy just saved us from being buried alive. He's anticipating their moves before they make them. The precision and timing of the sniper's interventions was becoming supernatural. Each shot seemed to target not just any enemy fighter, but specifically the ones who posed the greatest threat at exactly the right moment. It was as if their protector could see the entire tactical situation from a god's eye view. Rodriguez attempted to establish communication with their unknown benefactor. Unknown sniper, this is Ground Team Alpha. If you can hear this transmission, we need to coordinate our defensive fires. Only Static answered his call. Whoever was up there was operating independently, making his own tactical decisions based on his assessment of the situation. But those decisions were proving to be flawless. The Taliban commanders were growing desperate. Their carefully planned ambush was falling apart due to the intervention of an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't locate, and couldn't defeat. They began taking increasingly desperate measures. A new sound joined the battle, the roar of motorcycle engines. The Taliban were bringing up reinforcements on dirt bikes, using their mobility to rapidly position additional fighters around the canyon. Within minutes, the Americans could hear engines approaching from multiple directions. Contact northwest. Motoatsuku is approaching fast. Chen called out as he acquired targets through his rifle scope. The dirt bikes carried 2 fighters each, a driver and a gunner with an assault rifle. They were using hit and run tactics, speeding past the ravine entrance while their passengers laid down suppressing fire, then disappearing behind rocks before regrouping for another pass. Williams engaged the first bike with his machine gun, the burst of fire sending both rider and passenger tumbling across the rocky ground in a tangle of metal and flesh. But 2 more bikes immediately took its place, their riders firing wildly as they raced past the American position. The motorcycle attacks were designed to pin down the SEAL team, while the main Taliban force continued their advance through the smoke. It was a sophisticated combined arms assault that demonstrated military planning and coordination far beyond what intelligence had indicated these fighters possessed. Kowalski eliminated one of the motorcycle gunners with a precise rifle shot, but the bikes were moving too fast for consistent targeting. We need to take out those engines before they overrun our position. The mysterious sniper seemed to understand the threat immediately. His next 3 shots came in rapid succession, each one targeting a motorcycle driver at the exact moment when the bike was crossing open ground. The vehicles crashed in spectacular fashion, sending their passengers flying through the air before impact. But the Taliban had more bikes, and they were learning from each attack. The newer waves of motorcycle assaults came from different angles and used better cover, making them harder targets for both the Americans and their guardian angel. Thompson was forced to divide his attention between treating Morrison and engaging the motorcycle attacks with his sidearm. Chief, they're trying to overwhelm us with speed and numbers. Classic swarm tactics. Morrison raised his rifle toward one of the approaching bikes, his wounded arm trembling with effort. I've got this one document. His shot took the driver off the bike, sending it cartwheeling into the ravine wall just meters from their position. The smoke was beginning to clear, revealing the true scope of the Taliban force arrayed against them. Rodriguez counted at least 60 fighters in positions around the canyon, with more arriving on motorcycles every few minutes. The enemy had committed a substantial force to this engagement, suggesting that the American team had been deliberately lured into this trap. Chen made a disturbing observation. Chief, these aren't random Taliban fighters. They're organized, equipped, and coordinated like a regular military unit. Somebody planned this operation very carefully. The realization that they had been specifically targeted made the situation even more dangerous. This wasn't a chance encounter or an opportunistic ambush. It was a carefully orchestrated attempt to eliminate an entire SEAL team, possibly as part of a larger propaganda operation. Williams was down to his last few rounds when a mysterious sniper demonstrated capabilities that defied explanation. A rapid series of shots from the high ground eliminated 6 Taliban fighters in different positions across the canyon within the span of 10 seconds. Each shot was a precision kill at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. "That's impossible," Kowalski muttered, watching through his scope as enemy fighters dropped with mechanical precision. "Nobody shoots that fast and accurate at these ranges. Not even our best snipers." The psychological effect on the Taliban fighters was devastating. Men who had been advancing with confidence began falling back in confusion and fear. Shouts in Pashto echoed across the canyon as unit leaders tried to maintain control over their increasingly demoralized troops. Rodriguez realized that their mysterious protector was single-handedly changing the outcome of an engagement that should have resulted in the annihilation of his entire team. But he also knew that the Taliban wouldn't give up easily, and the situation remained extremely dangerous. The Apache helicopter was now 4 minutes away, but those 4 minutes felt like an eternity as the battle raged around them. The question was no longer whether they would survive, but whether they would live long enough to discover the identity of the guardian angel who had saved their lives. The Taliban forces were regrouping for what appeared to be their final assault when something unprecedented happened. The mysterious sniper began firing not single shots, but coordinated volleys from multiple positions simultaneously. Chief Rodriguez watched in stunned disbelief as muzzle flashes appeared from 3 different locations on the high ground, all firing at the same moment. The mathematical impossibility of what he was witnessing made him question his own senses. "Chief, are you seeing this?" Petty Officer Chin's voice carried a mixture of awe and confusion. "Either that guy has learned to be in 3 places at once, or we got an entire sniper team up there." Senior Chief Kowalski was tracking the shots through his binoculars, trying to make sense of the tactical situation developing above them. "The angles are all different, the timing is perfect, and the target selection is coordinated. We're looking at professional military snipers, not insurgents or local fighters." The coordinated sniper fire was devastating the Taliban assault. Key leaders, heavy weapons crews, and assault team leaders were being eliminated with surgical precision from multiple angles. The enemy force that had seemed overwhelming just minutes before was dissolving into chaos and confusion. Williams took advantage of the confusion to conserve his remaining ammunition while observing the Taliban retreat. Whoever those guys are, they just turned the tables on this entire engagement. We went from being dead men to having the tactical advantage. Morrison was looking stronger despite his wound, the adrenaline of combat, and the hope of survival giving him renewed energy. "Doc, I think we're going to make it home after all." Thompson smiled grimly while checking Morrison's bandages. "Don't get overconfident, Jake. We're not out of this yet." The Apache helicopter's distinctive rotor sound was becoming audible in the distance, growing stronger each minute. Rodriguez knew that once the gunship arrived on station, the remaining Taliban fighters would either retreat or be destroyed. But the question of their mysterious benefactors was becoming more pressing with each impossible shot. Rodriguez attempted radio contact again. "Unknown sniper team, this is Ground Team Alpha. Please identify yourselves. We have air support inbound and need to coordinate to avoid friendly fire incidents." This time, a voice responded through the static. The accent was distinctly American, with the calm professionalism of someone accustomed to combat operations. "Ground Team Alpha, this is Sierra Actual. We have overwatch on your position. Continue mission as planned." The response raised more questions than it answered. Sierra Actual wasn't any call sign in their operational area, and no American sniper teams were supposed to be operating in this sector. Yet the voice, the tactics, and the incredible marksmanship suggested elite American military personnel. Chen was the first to voice what everyone was thinking. Chief, who the hell is Sierra Actual? And how did they get into position without anyone knowing about it? Kowalski had been studying the sniper positions and had reached a disturbing conclusion. Chief, those firing positions are physically impossible to reach from any known access routes. The terrain is too steep, too exposed, and would require hours of climbing under enemy observation. The mystery deepened as the sniper team continued their precision fire. Each shot demonstrated not only exceptional marksmanship, but also intimate knowledge of small unit tactics and enemy behavior patterns. These weren't just skilled shooters. They were consummate professionals who understood the dynamics of the engagement better than the participants themselves. The Taliban commanders were clearly struggling to maintain control over their forces. Radio intercepts indicated confusion and fear spreading through their ranks as fighters reported being engaged by ghost soldiers who appeared and disappeared at will. Williams observed one Taliban squad attempting to withdraw from their position when precision fire from the high ground eliminated their squad leader and assistant gunner in rapid succession. These guys aren't just shooting, they're conducting psychological warfare. They're targeting exactly the people who keep Taliban units functioning. The psychological aspect of the engagement was becoming as important as the tactical one. The Taliban fighters were facing an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't locate, and couldn't engage effectively. Their morale was cracking under the pressure of fighting ghosts. Rodriguez realized that Sierra Actual, whoever they were, had essentially won the battle through superior positioning, exceptional marksmanship, and perfect timing. The Taliban force that had seemed so confident and overwhelming was now in full retreat. The Apache helicopter crested the ridgeline and immediately began engaging the retreating Taliban fighters with its 30mm cannon and Hellfire missiles. The combined pressure from the mysterious snipers and the air support was more than the enemy force could withstand. Ground Team Alpha, this is Apache 7-7. We have visual on multiple enemy forces withdrawing to the northeast. Request permission to engage. Rodriguez granted permission while continuing to monitor the high ground where their saviors maintained overwatch. Apache 7-7, you are cleared hot on all targets northeast of our position. Be advised we have unknown, friendly sniper team providing support from the high ground. The pilot's response reflected the confusion that was spreading through the entire operation. Ground Team Alpha, we show no friendly forces in your area other than your team. Can you confirm identity of the sniper team? Before Rodriguez could respond, the Sierra Actual voice came back over the radio with a message that would haunt him for years to come. Ground Team Alpha, mission complete. Maintain operational security regarding this engagement. Sierra Actual going dark. Chen immediately tried to re-establish contact. Sierra Actual, this is Ground Team Alpha. We need to coordinate extraction and debrief. Please maintain contact. Only silence answered their calls. The mysterious sniper team had vanished as suddenly and completely as they had appeared, leaving behind only the evidence of their incredible marksmanship and perfect tactical judgment. Thompson was helping Morrison prepare for helicopter extraction when they heard the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors from an unexpected direction. An unmarked Black Hawk was approaching from the north, flying at high speed and low altitude. Chief, we've got an unidentified helo approaching from the north, Williams called out while maintaining security on their perimeter. Rodriguez attempted to contact the aircraft. Unknown helicopter approaching from the north. This is Ground Team Alpha. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The Black Hawk pilot's response was professionally neutral, but offered no identification. Ground Team Alpha, we are conducting recovery operations in your area. Maintain your current position and continue normal procedures. The unmarked helicopter landed briefly on a flat area high above the canyon before taking off again and disappearing toward the north. The entire landing and takeoff took less than 2 minutes, but it was long enough for several figures in non-standard gear to board the aircraft. Kowalski watched the departure through his binoculars and noted several disturbing details. Chief, those weren't regular military personnel. Their equipment and procedures were different from anything I've seen in 18 years of special operations. The implications were staggering. The SEAL team had been saved by a sniper team that officially didn't exist, using capabilities that seemed to exceed known military technology, and had been extracted by an unmarked aircraft that wasn't part of any acknowledged operation. Morrison was being loaded onto the Apache for medical evacuation when he grabbed Rodriguez's arm. "Chief, what just happened here? Who were those guys?" Rodriguez looked up toward the high ground where their mysterious guardians had operated with such deadly efficiency. "Jake, I honestly don't know. But I do know they saved our lives when nobody else could have." The Apache pilot provided additional disturbing information as they prepared to depart. "Ground Team Alpha, be advised that satellite surveillance shows no personnel in the sniper positions your team identified. The high ground appears to have been unoccupied throughout the engagement." Chun stared up at the rocky outcroppings where they had clearly seen muzzle flashes and identified firing positions. "Chief, that's impossible. We all saw them. We all heard them. They saved our lives." Kowalski was studying the Taliban casualties scattered around the canyon through a scope. "Chief, every single one of these kills was a precision headshot at extreme range. The marksmanship was beyond anything I've ever seen, even in our most elite units." The mystery was becoming more complex with each piece of evidence they examined. Physical proof of incredible marksmanship combined with official denials of any friendly presence created a puzzle that defied rational explanation. As the SEAL team prepared to extract from what should have been their final battleground, Rodriguez made a decision that would define the rest of his career. He would investigate Sierra Actual, regardless of what official channels told him about the engagement. The battle was over, but the mystery was just beginning. 3 months after the engagement in the Afghan mountains, Chief Rodriguez sat in a secure briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command, still searching for answers about Sierra Actual. The official after-action report had classified the entire incident, citing operational security concerns and need-to-know restrictions. Every attempt to investigate the mysterious sniper team had been met with bureaucratic stonewalls and polite but firm suggestions that he should focus on other matters. The message was clear. Some questions were not meant to be asked, and some mysteries were not meant to be solved. Morrison had recovered fully from his wounds and returned to operational status, but like the rest of the team, he was haunted by the memory of their impossible salvation. During a quiet moment in the team room, he approached Rodriguez with information that would change everything. "Chief, I've been doing some research on my own time," Morrison said quietly, checking to ensure they weren't overheard. "I found something you need to see." Morrison handed Rodriguez a classified intelligence summary from 1987, describing a Soviet Special Forces unit that had been ambushed in the same canyon where the SEAL team had nearly died. According to the report, the entire Spetsnaz unit had been wiped out by unknown snipers firing from the high ground. "Look at the casualty descriptions." Morrison pointed to a section of the document. Every kill was described as a precision headshot at extreme range. The Soviet investigation concluded that they had been engaged by a sniper team with capabilities beyond anything in the known Afghan arsenal. Rodriguez studied the report with growing amazement. The tactical description of the Soviet engagement was virtually identical to their own experience. Same canyon, same firing positions, same impossible marksmanship, same mysterious disappearance of the sniper team. Senior Chief Kowalski joined their conversation, adding another piece to the puzzle. "Chief, I did some checking with old-timers who served in Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation. There are stories about a group of snipers who protected American-supported Mujahideen fighters from Soviet forces. The stories Kowalski had uncovered described a sniper team that appeared during critical engagements, eliminated key threats with supernatural accuracy, then vanished without trace. Afghan fighters called them the ghosts of the mountains and considered them to be spirits of ancient warriors protecting the homeland. Chin had been conducting his own investigation through unofficial channels, reaching out to contacts in other special operations units. His findings added another layer to the mystery. Chief, I found reports of similar incidents involving British SAS, Canadian JDF-2, and Australian CSR units, Chin reported during a private meeting. Same pattern, elite teams in desperate situations saved by unknown sniper support, followed by official denials and classification of all records. The pattern suggested that Sierra Actual, or teams like them, have been operating for decades, intervening in critical situations involving Allied Special Operations Forces. But the consistency of their capabilities across multiple decades raised questions that challenged conventional understanding of military operations. Thompson had taken a different approach to the investigation, focusing on the medical aspects of their experience. As a trained medic, he was uniquely positioned to analyze the physiological impossibilities of what they had witnessed. Chief, I've been thinking about the timeline of the engagement, Thompson explained. The sniper team fired from positions that were separated by distances that would require at least 30 minutes to traverse, but they were engaging targets simultaneously. The mathematical analysis of the sniper positions revealed that no human team could have accomplished what they had witnessed. The distances, angles, and timing suggested either supernatural intervention or technology that exceeded anything in the known military inventory. Williams had focused his investigation on the ballistics evidence from the engagement. His expertise with weapons systems led him to conclusions that were equally disturbing. Chief, the bullet trajectories and impact patterns don't match any known rifle system, Williams reported. The precision at those ranges would require technology that's at least 20 years ahead of anything we have in inventory. The ballistics analysis suggested that Sierra Actual was using weapons technology that was far in advance of standard military equipment. The accuracy and consistency of their shots exceeded the theoretical capabilities of current sniper systems. Rodriguez compiled all the evidence his team had gathered and requested a meeting with his commanding officer. Captain James Mitchell was a veteran of multiple special operations deployments and someone Rodriguez trusted to handle sensitive information appropriately. Sir, my team has uncovered evidence of a covert sniper unit that has been operating in Afghanistan for decades, Rodriguez began carefully. They saved our lives, but officially, they don't exist. Captain Mitchell listened to the briefing without interruption, his expression growing more serious as Rodriguez presented each piece of evidence. When the presentation was complete, Mitchell was quiet for several minutes before responding. Chief, what I'm about to tell you never leaves this room, Mitchell said finally. There are some operations that exist at classification levels above top secret. Some capabilities that are never acknowledged, even within the special operations community. Mitchell's explanation confirmed what Rodriguez had begun to suspect. Sierra Actual was part of a program so classified that most military personnel would never learn of its existence. The sniper team that had saved their lives operated under authorities and with capabilities that were beyond conventional military understanding. The important thing, Mitchell continued, is that they were there when you needed them. Sometimes that has to be enough. Rodriguez understood that he had reached the limit of what he was allowed to know. The mystery of Sierra Actual would remain officially unsolved, filed away in classified archives that most people would never see. But the personal impact of their intervention would last forever. Morrison returned to his wife and newborn daughter. Thompson continued saving lives as a SEAL medic. Chin became an instructor at the Naval Special Warfare Training Center. Williams developed new tactics for small unit operations, and Kowalski completed his career with distinction before retiring to teach military history. Each of them carried the memory of 12 minutes when the impossible became reality, when guardian angels materialized from mountain rocks to stand between them and death. They would never speak publicly about Sierra Actual, but they would never forget the debt they owed to the ghosts in the mountains. Years later, Rodriguez would encounter other special operations veterans who shared similar stories. Desperate situations resolved by mysterious intervention, followed by official silence and classification. The pattern suggested that Sierra Actual, or units like them, continued their work in the shadows, protecting those who protected freedom. The truth about the hidden sniper team would remain classified, buried in files that acknowledge capabilities beyond public understanding. But for 12 Navy SEALs who had faced certain death in an Afghan canyon, the truth was simple and profound. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes guardian angels wear camouflage and carry rifles. The mountain keeps its secrets, but the lives it saved continue to serve with honor, carrying forward the legacy of warriors who appeared when hope seemed lost and disappeared when their work was done. In the brotherhood of special operations, some debts can never be repaid, only honored through continued service and the quiet knowledge that somewhere in the mountains, the ghosts are still watching. The official record would show that a SEAL team conducting operations in Afghanistan encountered heavy resistance and successfully extracted with one wounded in action. The unofficial record, shared in quiet moments between warriors who understood the true cost of freedom, would remember the day the mountains themselves took up arms to protect America's finest. Sierra Actual had completed their mission with their characteristic precision and silence. The SEAL team lived to fight another day. Their families welcomed them home, and the war continued. But in the rocky heights of Afghanistan, where eagles soar and legends are born, the ghosts had added another chapter to their eternal watch over those who serve in freedom's name. The mystery of the hidden sniper would endure, passed down in whispered stories among those who understood that some truths transcend official acknowledgement, and some heroes prefer the shadows to the light. For those who served, that was not just enough, it was everything.